Greetings everyone, my name is Buck Business. Konnichiwa, I'm Kawaii Critic, and today we're here to review My Little Pony Season 7, Episode 15, Triple Threat. So, we begin this episode with Spiky-chan, who claims to be an ambassador of other dragons, and this comes from, of course, one of the previous episodes with Amber-san, and she's coming to Ponyville only to also learn that Spiky Chan invited Thorax-san as well. So he's at first scared that he's going to not be able to entertain them both. But it is further revealed that it is a pretty weak reason of his fear, as it's initially based off of just them not being able to get along with Amber's more aggressive nature, and apparently Thorax's more back nervousness type of attitude, which I honestly don't think makes a lot of sense. I mean, he's been around the main, well, I guess I'll say seven at this point, and with the friendships that are connected through that, you have characters like Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash, the very assertive versus, well, prior shyness and timidness that has become a little bit more assertive over the years, but even initially they were friends for a long time even before then. So this fear is a little bit perplexing, and it's a little bit, I don't know, it kind of bogs the episode down for that reason. The other reason, which bounces off the first reason, is a bit more understandable actually, and a bit more interesting. If they were to focus on that first, maybe I could have understood it a bit more, but the whole them getting into a war with each other, that is something I could see as a bit more of a crux as to why to keep them separated. But the first initial reason just wasn't that strong. Anyways, we have Twilight playing along with this charade that Spike has to deal with as Ember comes in. And from there, we see Amber-san meet Starlight-san, and those two get that little cool moment where they're just like, yeah, she's cool. And then we get this weird moment with like Twilight-san and her chair loving, and how Thorax-san is getting bummed out. And after their first initial trying to keep away from each other, the map calls Spike-san, Spike, sorry, Spike-chan to the map calls him, I should say. And that is probably also very interesting, as he did originally have one of the chairs that was a part of the growth of this table to begin with, so him being called to the map actually makes a bit more sense than Starlight Sun, interestingly enough, in our eyes anyway. So anyways, from there, Spike Chan feels he needs to try to find a friendship problem, completely overlooking the most obvious one, the one he's being meant to fix between, well, Thorax-san and Ember-san. Instead, he goes through the town looking for other ponies. We get him sort of, well, looking at other ponies that could potentially be having anything, but it doesn't seem like it. There's like a few one character here and there, and there's like a diner, and then there's like these two stallions that are dating, I think. I don't know. Uh, but hey, always in that shipping mood, I guess. At least for me. Anyways, getting back on track. Uh, Spike-san eventually sees that there are ponies having issues, but of course those are not not the main case, and that only through him avoiding the main issues, the two characters who are in the actual issue are getting closer and closer as Starlight San and Twilight San are both bringing them outside, and they both just happen to be getting closer and closer to each other. But before that, we do see that Spike gets a talking to from Thorax, and he talks about something that is probably going to be coming up later this season, which is these renegade changelings. And he also mentions his brother, which I don't know if his brother is like the leader of this renegade changeling or not, but that is a very interesting aspect that some people may have considered, though it does seem a bit odd. I will also admit that at the same time. It does seem to appear out of nowhere a little bit. I mean, from that episode, it did seem like every changeling that at least we saw, was doing the whole friendship sharing. So maybe just some of them, even after changing, thought, this whole friendship thing is kind of silly. Or maybe some of them weren't all affected. I don't know which one it's going to end up being, but regardless of which one it is, it does seem to come out a bit out of nowhere. Maybe there should have been a little bit of a hint at it before, so when we hear that, we can come to the establishment of yes, that makes a little bit more sense. Anyways, we see that Ember is now in proximity, and she's kind of angry at Spike because she felt she was being avoided, and after getting Twilight and Starlight all mixed up and all that nonsense, she kind of yells at Spike, which causes Thorax to step up, and they both believe they are in the right. And Spike's secondary fear of this whole war thing is coming to uh, into a possibility in his eyes. So they end up both seeing that their issues came from this misunderstanding and came mostly from Spike himself trying to avoid this situation. So they both fly off and they talk with each other, which is actually more of the reason why this friendship problem was solved instead of Spike, which I actually find a bit interesting that sometimes giving people space is actually also a reasonable solution to a problem, allowing them to interact with one on one and actually getting to hear what type of leaders they are is both a good thing, and I also believe it is a big flaw of this episode. There's the whole aspect of showing and not telling everything, and to some extent, I think that it all depends on how it's executed. And in this scenario, I believe it's both, again, a good and a bad thing. First, the good. At least we know what type of leaders they are. And we did get a little bit of a hint on their respective episodes, which what kind of leaders they are, but just hearing them say it and confirm it, I think is a little bit more of it gives a little bit of clarity, I'll say, because we haven't really seen, and this is the flaw, by the way, we haven't really seen them as leaders of their clans or whatever you want to call their groups. I guess the Changeling group is a clan. I think that's what the word they used here. And as I said, just not hearing that or seeing what type of leaders they were does hurt a bit about that aspect. So from there, the two meet back up with Spiky Chan, and they both bring up their points, and they both take each other's advice, and from there, they're able to forgive him as that guilt from Spiky Chan is also overwhelming. So thing ends up working out just totally fine. And in the end, Spiky Chan ends up winning those ambassador points, although he says he's technically not an ambassador, and ends up doing the whole friendship lesson. And, you know, we have Ember San making the whole joke about, That's what ponies do as the whole lesson thing, and that's somehow part of friendship. At any rate, this episode is a bit of a mixed bag for me, as this whole situation is something we've both seen time and time again, and it does kind of oddly enough remind me of a lot of romantic comedy situations, which by the way, most of those aren't really that great in my opinion. So that aspect alone, the very premise of this episode brings up issues with us. And the way, again, it's executed does bring up issues from, as I mentioned, not being able to see what type of leaders they actually were. We didn't get any time with that, so we just have to go based off of what we know before they were technically leaders, by the way. And we have nothing else really, but the other thing is the solution to the problem also is kind of bogged down by it could have been solved like this, and it's very just much that fear. Again, it feels the initial reason, as I mentioned at the beginning, feels so weak and so it doesn't make a lot of sense based on Spike's experience with friendship. It just comes out of nowhere. Again, the secondary reason does elevate it. I do understand that, as preventing a war, yeah, that's a pretty noble reason to want to make things work. But then again, you would think if you wanted them to prevent a war, to have a meeting with each other instead of having them avoid each other for that long. If anything, if they had avoided each other for even longer, who knows what the outcome might have been if they just met without Spike. So, with that, again, this episode is a very mixed bag, and that's a shame because I believe Spike, even from season 6 all the way up until this point, has been very well done. He's had some of the best episodes in season 6, and even when he wasn't a main character, he was still finding times to shine. And now that he's in season 7 and all the way up until this episode, we get this. And it feels like Spike is going back a few paces once again, and it comes from a place again that just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense based on the whole aspect of how long he's known the main seven and their type of friendships and whatnot. But that is, I suppose, more so of an opinion, but also our review of this episode. So, with that, that is the end of this review. Stekpat Teng Tong Tori! And if you enjoyed this review, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, everyone, farewell. Bye!